The warning came sharp and humiliating, slicing through the open-plan office like a blade. Peek again, and you're fired. Heads turned, screens went still. In that moment, Daniel Carter felt the familiar heat of shame crawl up his neck, the kind that came not from guilt, but from being judged without being understood. He was a single father, exhausted, overworked, and barely holding his life together, and yet this was how the world chose to see him. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories where quiet strength changes everything, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Daniel had never imagined his life turning out this way. 10 years earlier, he had been a young man full of plans, steady confidence, and simple dreams. A decent job, a small home, laughter in the evenings. But life did not ask permission before it unraveled. His wife's sudden passing after a brief illness shattered everything overnight, leaving him alone with a 4-year-old daughter who still waited by the door some evenings, believing her mother would walk in smiling. From that moment on, Daniel learned how grief could coexist with responsibility, how tears had to be swallowed before breakfast, and how strength often meant showing up even when you felt hollow inside. Mornings began before sunrise. He packed lunches with careful precision, checked homework twice, tied shoelaces, and brushed hair that reminded him painfully of the woman he had lost. His daughter, Lily, had big curious eyes and a quiet maturity that came from understanding too much too early. She never complained about the small apartment or the long waits at daycare. She just watched her father with trust, believing he could fix anything. That belief was both his greatest comfort and his heaviest burden. Daniel's job at the marketing firm was supposed to be a lifeline. It paid the bills, kept food on the table, and allowed Lily to attend a modest but safe daycare near the office. But the workplace culture was rigid, unkind to anyone who didn't fit neatly into its expectations. Flexibility was spoken of in company emails but frowned upon in reality. Parents, especially single ones, were seen as liabilities rather than people. Daniel knew this, and so he tried to be invisible. He arrived early, left late, skipped breaks, and avoided drawing attention to himself. The incident that changed everything seemed small on the surface. Lily's daycare had a strict policy about pickups. 1 late arrival meant a warning. 2 meant penalties Daniel could not afford. That afternoon, his phone vibrated silently with a message. Lily had tripped during playtime and was crying uncontrollably, asking for her father. The caregiver assured him she was physically fine but emotionally shaken. Daniel's chest tightened. He glanced at his screen, reread the message, and then looked at the clock. He still had 30 minutes left in his shift. He didn't leave. He couldn't risk it. Instead, he checked his phone again a few minutes later, hoping for reassurance. That was when his manager noticed. From across the office, it looked like distraction, like disinterest, like weakness. The warning was delivered loudly, without context, without mercy. Peek again, and you're fired. Something shifted inside Daniel at that moment. Not anger, not fear, but a deep, steady resolve. He lowered his phone, took a breath, and returned to his work with a calm that surprised even him. He finished his tasks efficiently, shut down his computer on time, and left the office without a word. Outside, the evening air felt heavy, but he walked faster than usual, guilt pressing on his chest. When he reached the daycare, Lily ran into his arms, her small hands gripping his shirt as if she might lose him too. He knelt there, holding her, feeling the weight of everything he was trying to protect. That night, after Lily fell asleep clutching her favorite stuffed bear, Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table. The warning echoed in his mind, but instead of fear, it sparked reflection. He realized he had been shrinking himself to survive, apologizing for needs that were not flaws. He wondered what kind of example he was setting for his daughter by accepting humiliation as normal. The next morning, Daniel returned to work with the same quiet determination. He did his job well, but he no longer hid. When Lily's school sent updates, he checked them openly during breaks. When he needed to step out briefly for a call, he informed his team politely and professionally. He didn't explain himself excessively, he simply existed as he was. The tension grew. Colleagues whispered, some avoided him. Others watched with curiosity. His manager, accustomed to obedience and silence, grew increasingly irritated by Daniel's composed presence. Another comment was made, this time less public but no less sharp. Daniel listened, nodded, and responded calmly, explaining that he was meeting all performance targets and that his brief phone checks were related to his child's safety. There was no apology in his tone, only clarity. What Daniel didn't know was that someone else was watching. A senior executive visiting the floor that week had noticed the dynamic. She observed Daniel's consistent output, his respectful demeanor, and the subtle tension directed at him. She also noticed something else: loyalty. Despite the pressure, Daniel never complained, he never blamed, he simply worked and left on time, carrying the invisible weight of his life without making it anyone else's burden. A week later, everything changed. An internal review was announced focusing on workplace culture and management practices. Anonymous feedback was encouraged. Daniel hesitated. Years of staying quiet had trained him to avoid rocking the boat. But then he thought of Lily, of the world he was teaching her to accept. He submitted a brief, factual account of his experience. No accusations, just truth. The review uncovered patterns that could no longer be ignored. High turnover among parents, consistent complaints about public reprimands, a culture of fear disguised as discipline. The manager who had issued the warning was placed under investigation. Training sessions were mandated, policies were rewritten, not just on paper, but in practice. Daniel was called into a meeting he expected to be another warning. Instead, he was thanked, not publicly, not dramatically, but sincerely. His calm response, his refusal to react with anger, and his willingness to speak truth without malice had made an impact. He was offered a new role with flexible hours, one that recognized his skills and respected his responsibilities as a father. The change didn't just affect him. Other parents began to speak up. Quiet employees found courage. The office slowly transformed into a place where people were seen as human beings first, job titles second. And Daniel, who had once tried to disappear, became a quiet symbol of dignity. At home, the changes were even more profound. Evenings were less rushed. Dinner conversations grew longer. Lily noticed the difference before he did. She laughed more, slept better, and stopped asking if he was always tired. One night, as she showed him a drawing of their small family holding hands under a bright sun, Daniel felt a swell of emotion he couldn't name. It was hope, fragile but real. He understood then that strength didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered. Sometimes it simply refused to break. His calm reply that day hadn't just protected his job. It had protected his self-respect. It had shown his daughter that kindness didn't mean weakness and that standing your ground didn't require raising your voice. As the months passed, Daniel continued to work hard, but he no longer felt alone. The office became a place of collaboration rather than fear. And while life was still challenging, still imperfect, it felt lighter. He had learned that advocating for yourself didn't mean confrontation. It meant honesty. It meant calm. It meant believing that your story mattered. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own struggles or gave you strength to face them, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Before we end, we have a special request for you. Please comment below and tell us what part of Daniel's journey resonated with you the most, or share your own story of quiet strength. Your words might inspire someone else who feels unseen. Because sometimes, the calmest reply can change everything.